Elena's life, a quiet rhythm of scrubbing and polishing, was one of subtle shadows. Every dawn she navigated forgotten streets to the affluent neighborhoods, her worn hands a testament to years of unseen labor. Each house held its secrets, its silent dramas, but Elena kept her distance, her focus firmly on the task at hand. This particular morning promised to be no different from the countless others she had endured. The grand house on Willow Creek Lane, a sprawling testament to wealth, felt eerily quiet today. Its occupants, a father and his infant, had recently become her regular clients, though she rarely saw the father. Elena knew only whispers of their recent tragedy, a detail that added a layer of unspoken sorrow to her work. She pushed the heavy oak door open, the silence inside almost palpable, denser than usual. A faint chill permeated the expansive, tastefully decorated rooms. Dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight piercing through drawn blinds, highlighting a certain neglect that went beyond mere untidiness. It was the kind of disarray that spoke of absence, of a life abruptly derailed where daily routines had crumbled under an unbearable weight. Elena felt a familiar pang, a distant echo of her own past. Her gaze swept over the meticulously arranged living room, then drifted toward the stairs leading to the upper floor, where she knew the nursery was located. Usually, a soft gurgle or a distant baby monitor crackle might accompany her arrival, a subtle indication of life upstairs. Today, however, an unsettling stillness hung in the air, a silence that felt heavier than the dust itself, almost suffocating. Elena collected her cleaning supplies, the clinking of bottles and sponges, an unwelcome disturbance in the profound quiet. She tried to dismiss the growing unease, attributing it to her own overactive imagination, or perhaps just a particularly sleepy morning for the baby. Yet an instinct, raw and ancient, began to stir deep within her, whispering of something profoundly amiss in the silent house. Elena methodically began her work downstairs, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. She polished the antique furniture, vacuumed the Persian rugs, and wiped down the gleaming surfaces, her mind attempting to impose order on both the house and the subtle anxieties that were beginning to gather in her thoughts. The silence stretched, broken only by the whirring of her vacuum cleaner and the occasional creak of the old house. Then, beneath the rhythmic hum, a sound, faint, almost imperceptible at first, like a whisper carried on the wind. Elena paused, her hand hovering over a dusty mantelpiece, listening intently. It was gone, or so she told herself, a trick of the old building settling. She resumed her work, dismissing the anomaly. After all, old houses made all sorts of noises, and her imagination can be overly dramatic sometimes. Yet a lingering doubt persisted, a tiny seed of unease planted firmly in her subconscious. She continued cleaning, but her senses were now heightened, subtly scanning for any repetition of that elusive sound, a silent tension building within her. As she moved towards the kitchen, the sound returned, clearer this time. A whimper. Distinctly a child's whimper, though still incredibly soft, as if muffled by layers of distance and despair. It was undeniably coming from upstairs, from the direction of the nursery. Her heart gave a sudden lurch, a cold ripple spreading through her, intensifying the disquiet she already felt. Elena froze, her cleaning cloth forgotten in her hand. The whimper intensified slightly, morphing into a weak, sorrowful cry that tugged at something deep within her. Her professional detachment began to fray. What was happening upstairs? Where was the father? The questions swirled, demanding answers she didn't possess, drawing her inexorably towards the source of the distressing sound. The sound was now unmistakable, growing steadily louder. A baby's distressed cry,
raw and heartbreaking. It echoed through the otherwise silent mansion, a stark contrast to the luxurious emptiness surrounding Elena. Her hands trembled slightly as she switched off the vacuum, plunging the house back into a profound quiet that made the infant's cries seem even more desperate and immediate. Every instinct screamed at her to maintain her professional distance, to wait for the father to return, to simply do her job. But the sheer vulnerability in that small, persistent wail chipped away at her resolve. It wasn't just a cry. It was a plea, a testament to neglect, echoing the kind of deep, emotional stories that resonated with her own experiences of hardship and struggle. Slowly, cautiously, Elena started towards the grand staircase, her movements deliberate, almost hesitant. Each step on the plush carpet felt heavy, leading her deeper into an unknown situation. The house seemed to hold its breath around her, the air thick with unspoken fear and unanswered questions. The baby's cries grew more urgent with every passing second, spurring her on. Reaching the landing, the cries became sharper, tinged with a desperate, breathless quality that tore at Elena's heart. She could now discern the direction clearly. The nursery door, slightly ajar, casting a sliver of light onto the darkened hallway. A knot tightened in her stomach. What if the father was simply asleep? Or worse, what if no one was there at all to help this suffering child? A wave of trepidation washed over her, mingled with a fierce, protective urge. She pushed the nursery door open a little further, her gaze sweeping across the room. The sight that met her eyes was far worse than any dust or clutter. It was a scene of profound neglect, and a tiny, red-faced infant, alone in its crib, crying with a heartbreaking intensity that filled the entire space. Inside the nursery, the air was still and cool, despite the evident distress. A tiny crib stood in the center, and within it, a baby, no more than a few months old, thrashed weakly, its face a blotchy red, tears streaming down its cheeks. The helplessness of the situation struck Elena with the force of a physical blow, igniting a primal ache she thought she had long since buried.
Her mind raced, grappling with the ethical tightrope she was walking. She was a cleaner, an outsider, hired to polish surfaces, not to interfere with the deeply personal dramas of her clients. Yet the infant's desperate cries bypassed all professional protocols, appealing directly to the raw human empathy within her. This wasn't merely a job anymore. It was a moment of profound moral reckoning for Elena. Memories flickered through her mind, her own struggles, the times she felt unseen, unheard, abandoned. She understood, in a way few could, the silent language of suffering. The baby's cries weren't just about hunger or discomfort. They resonated with a deeper existential loneliness that Elena recognized from her own most difficult, harrowing experiences of the past. She hesitated at the threshold, her body rigid with uncertainty. Was the father truly gone? Had he forgotten the child? Or was this a deliberate act of abandonment? The questions piled up, each one heavier than the last, clouding her judgment. The baby's fragile existence seemed to hang precariously in the balance, utterly dependent on a stranger's compassion in that moment of crisis. The baby's cries, though still strong, began to take on a hoarse quality, a sign of exhaustion and prolonged distress. Elena couldn't stand by any longer, watching this tiny life endure such agony. Her heart, long hardened by life's blows, cracked open. Professional boundaries dissolved in the face of such profound vulnerability. She took a tentative step into the silent, waiting room. The sheer desperation in the baby's cries propelled Elena forward, overriding every ounce of doubt. Her professional detachment, a shield she had carefully constructed over years of hard service, crumbled instantly under the weight of such profound, innocent suffering. This was a moment that transcended her role. It called upon a deeper, more fundamental human instinct to nurture and protect. As she approached the crib, the smell of soiled diapers hit her, further evidence of prolonged neglect. The baby's small hands flailed weakly, its tiny fists clenching and unclenching in frantic despair. It was a heart-wrenching sight that solidified her decision. She couldn't leave this child to suffer alone, regardless of the potential repercussions or misunderstandings that might arise. Carefully, tentatively, she reached into the crib, her worn hands surprisingly gentle. The baby's cries faltered for a second, then renewed with even greater intensity as it felt a human touch. Elena scooped the tiny, trembling form into her arms, cradling it close to her chest. The warmth of the infant, its soft weight, was an unfamiliar, yet profoundly comforting sensation. The baby continued to wail, its little body shaking with sobs, but Elena held it tighter, rocking gently. She began to hum a forgotten lullaby from her own childhood, a tune filled with the melancholic echoes of simpler, perhaps happier times. Her voice was soft, a low murmur against the infant's ear, an instinctive act of comfort, hoping to soothe its deep-seated terror. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the intensity of the cries began to diminish. The baby, sensing the genuine warmth and safety, started to quieten, its ragged breaths slowly evening out. As Elena continued to sway, a fragile peace settled over the nursery, broken only by the baby's occasional sniffles and the quiet, rhythmic thumping of Elena's own compassionate heart. Nestled against Elena's shoulder, the baby's sobs finally subsided into soft whimpers, then an occasional hiccup. Its tiny hand, no bigger than Elena's thumb, grasped a loose thread on her worn apron, a gesture of absolute trust. In that moment, the lines between cleaner and caregiver blurred entirely. She was simply a woman offering solace to a suffering child, no questions asked. A wave of complex emotions washed over Elena: tenderness, sorrow, a fierce protectiveness, and a quiet rage at the apparent neglect. She felt a connection to this innocent life, a resonance with the purest form of vulnerability she had ever encountered. It was a potent mixture, stirring dormant maternal instincts she had believed were long dead, buried beneath layers of hardship and resignation. She continued to rock, her gaze sweeping around the silent nursery. The room was pristine, impeccably furnished, a stark contrast to the emotional disarray its timely occupant had endured. It highlighted the profound disconnect, a wealth of material possessions, yet an apparent deficit of fundamental care. This stark reality was truly one of those profoundly emotional stories that leave lasting marks. She tried to imagine the father's reasons for leaving the child alone for so long. Was it desperation, grief, neglect? Her mind offered no easy answers, only more questions, each one compounding the unsettling mystery of the house. She knew she couldn't judge, not truly, without understanding the full depth of his circumstance. But her heart ached for the vulnerable child. As the baby finally settled into a peaceful sleep against her, a sense of calm enveloped Elena. But it was a fragile calm, a temporary reprieve. She knew the father would eventually return, and with his arrival, the precarious peace she had forged would shatter. She wondered, with a growing knot of apprehension, what his reaction would be upon finding her cradling his child. The soft, even breathing of the sleeping infant in Elena's arms was the only sound in the quiet nursery. A fragile stillness had descended, but Elena remained on edge, her senses acutely aware of every creak and rustle from outside.
Her heart pounded a nervous rhythm against her ribs, anticipating the moment of inevitable confrontation that loomed closer with every passing second. Just as she contemplated laying the baby back down, the distinct sound of a key turning in the front door lock echoed through the house. It was him, the father. A jolt of adrenaline shot through Elena. Her mind raced, grappling with how to explain her presence, her actions. Would he understand? Or would he see only a trespassing employee violating professional boundaries?
Footsteps, heavy and hurried, ascended the main staircase, drawing closer with terrifying speed. Elena tightened her grip on the sleeping baby, instinctively shielding its head with her hand. Her breath hitched in her throat, a cold dread washing over her. She braced herself, ready for the accusations, the anger, the inevitable misunderstanding that seemed destined to unfold. The nursery door, still ajar, swung open wider with a sudden push. Standing in the doorway was a man, his face etched with exhaustion and grief, his clothes disheveled. His eyes, sunken and red, swept across the room, landing abruptly on Elena, who stood frozen, cradling his child. The air in the room thickened instantly, charged with unspoken tension. A stunned silence fell. The man's eyes widened slightly in disbelief, then narrowed with a flicker of raw, unadulterated suspicion. He hadn't expected to find anyone, least of all his cleaner holding his baby. Elena could feel the weight of his gaze, a palpable accusation, and her carefully constructed composure threatened to unravel entirely in the face of his formidable presence. The man's voice, when it came, was low and guttural, laced with exhaustion and a dangerous edge. "What are you doing with my son?" The words hung heavy in the air, a direct challenge that pierced through Elena's already frayed nerves. She instinctively pulled the baby closer, a silent gesture of protection that perhaps only fueled his initial suspicion and profound rage. Elena struggled to find her voice, her throat tight with a mixture of fear and indignation. He was crying. He was alone. Her explanation felt thin, inadequate against the backdrop of his obvious distress and the unexpected intimacy of the scene. She watched as his expression shifted from surprise to a deepening anger, his jaw clenching, his fists clenching at his sides. He took a step into the room, his presence dominating the space. "Alone? I was only gone for a moment. This is not your place." His accusation, though harsh, carried a tremor of something deeper. Fear, perhaps, or profound guilt. She saw it, a flicker of humanity beneath the hostility, but it was quickly overshadowed by his escalating frustration and raw pain. Her heart sank. He wasn't seeing a woman who had offered comfort, he was seeing an intruder, a boundary violator. The injustice of it stung, but she knew logic was futile in the face of such intense emotion. The baby miraculously remained asleep, a serene island in a sea of building conflict, oblivious to the storm brewing between the two adults caught in this complex, emotionally charged moment. Elena stood her ground, her gaze meeting his, a silent plea for understanding in her tired eyes. She refused to cower, despite the fear. This was not about her pride. It was about the child she still cradled and the truth of her intentions. The tension was palpable, a precarious balance teetering on the edge of erupting into a full-blown argument, or perhaps even something more profound.
As Elena met his gaze, she noticed the faint tremor in his hands, the dark circles under his eyes, the almost imperceptible slump in his shoulders. This wasn't just anger. It was the profound exhaustion of a man at his breaking point. The veneer of hostility began to crack, revealing a deeper well of suffering that resonated deeply with Elena's own past. He was hysterical, Elena repeated, her voice softer now, tinged with a quiet understanding. For a long time, I couldn't just leave him. Her words, stripped of defensiveness, seemed to pierce through his anger. He blinked, a flicker of comprehension dawning in his grief-stricken eyes, as if truly hearing her for the first time amidst his own internal chaos. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair, a sigh escaping his lips that sounded like a collapse. "My wife, she died last month," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper, the raw grief evident. I'm just trying to keep it all together. I had to get formula. He ran out. I was only gone for 15 minutes, I swear." The confession hung in the air. The raw honesty of his words disarmed Elena completely. The anger, the judgment she had felt, melted away, replaced by a profound empathy. He wasn't negligent. He was broken, overwhelmed by an unimaginable loss and the crushing burden of single parenthood. He was simply a man drowning, doing his desperate best to navigate an unforgiving new reality alone. Elena looked down at the peaceful baby in her arms, then back at the distraught father. The image of the crying infant, juxtaposed with the father's despair, painted a vivid picture of quiet tragedy. This was a genuine human struggle, a testament to how life could shatter even the strongest, leaving them vulnerable and isolated. A silent connection formed between them. The father, whose name Elena now remembered was Daniel, sagged against the doorframe, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. His initial fury had dissolved into a profound, raw sorrow that filled the room. Elena watched him, her heart aching, understanding that his outburst wasn't about her, but about the unbearable weight he carried alone. I don't know what I'm doing," Daniel choked out, wiping his eyes with a trembling hand. "I'm failing him. Every day." The admission was heartbreaking, a rare glimpse into the true vulnerability beneath a man's stoic exterior. Elena realized he wasn't just seeing a cleaner anymore. He was seeing a witness to his deepest pain and perhaps an unexpected source of compassion. Elena gently shifted the sleeping baby, offering him a silent comfort he hadn't known he needed. "You're not failing him," she said softly, her voice steady and kind. "You're doing the best you can in an impossible situation. We all stumble sometimes." Her words weren't a platitude. They were spoken from a place of deep, personal understanding of life's many trials. Daniel looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and for the first time, Elena saw not anger or suspicion, but a desperate gratitude, a plea for help. He saw not just the cleaner who had momentarily overstepped her bounds, but a compassionate human being who had soothed his child when he couldn't, who had understood his silent suffering without a single word of explanation. He nodded slowly, a profound exhaustion settling over him. "Thank you," he whispered, the words barely audible. "Thank you for being here." It was a simple phrase, but it carried the weight of everything unsaid, the acknowledgement of a profound, unexpected kindness in his darkest hour. Their relationship, initially defined by employment, transformed in that quiet, shared moment. In the days and weeks that followed, the atmosphere in Daniel's house shifted profoundly. The rigid boundary between employer and employees softened, replaced by a fragile yet genuine human connection. Elena continued her cleaning duties, but now there was a silent acknowledgement, a shared history that transcended their official roles and brought comfort to both. Daniel started to be more present, his grief still palpable, but his isolation lessening. He would occasionally exchange a few words with Elena, asking about her day,
or sharing a small detail about his son. He never explicitly apologized for his initial outburst, but his quiet respect, the way he held her gaze, spoke volumes about his understanding and his profound gratitude for her actions. Elena, in turn, found a quiet purpose, beyond just her work. The baby, Leo, now often awake and gurgling during her visits, would reach for her, a small hand grasping her finger. These moments, simple yet profound, filled a void she hadn't realized was so deep within her, offering a gentle balm to old wounds and reminding her of the enduring power of connection. Daniel eventually hired a part-time nanny, acknowledging his limitations, but he always made sure Elena felt valued, often leaving small, thoughtful gestures, a warm cup of coffee, a fresh pastry, a simple thank you note. It wasn't about lavish gifts or grand gestures. It was about genuine appreciation, a recognition of her humanity that meant more than any monetary bonus. Their story wasn't a fairy tale with a dramatic, movie-like ending. It was a testament to the quiet, unassuming power of human compassion in the face of tragedy. It showed how a moment of crisis, instead of tearing lives apart, could unexpectedly forge bonds, creating a network of support where none existed before, transforming profound grief into shared hope. Elena's life, while still one of hard work, felt subtly richer. She carried the weight of her past differently, softened by the unexpected connection she had formed. She learned that vulnerability wasn't a weakness, but an open door for empathy, revealing the strength that lay hidden within people even when they believed themselves utterly broken and beyond help. The incident with Daniel and Leo became a quiet cornerstone in her understanding of life. It taught her that judgments, often formed in haste, rarely captured the full, intricate tapestry of another person's struggles. Every individual carried unseen burdens, and a simple act of kindness could illuminate their darkest hours even when they didn't know how to ask for it.
Daniel, too, began to heal. The weight of his grief didn't vanish, but it became a little easier to bear, knowing he wasn't entirely alone. Elena's presence, initially a source of conflict, had become a quiet assurance, a symbol of the unexpected compassion that can emerge from the most desperate of circumstances. He learned to trust, to lean on others, and to accept help. The house, once filled with a palpable sadness, now echoed with the sounds of a growing child and the occasional gentle conversations between its occupants and Elena. It was no longer just a house she cleaned. It was a home where a quiet, ongoing story of resilience and recovery unfolded daily, a testament to the fragile but enduring human spirit that fought to overcome despair. Their journey underscored the truth that some of the most profound transformations occur not through grand events, but through small, consistent acts of genuine humanity. It's in these subtle shifts, these shared vulnerabilities, that true change takes root, allowing individuals to navigate their personal tragedies with newfound strength and an unexpected sense of belonging. This narrative, one of many truly moving emotional stories, serves as a powerful reminder that kindness often arrives in unassuming packages, emerging from the most unexpected interactions. It challenges us to look beyond superficial appearances, beyond roles and titles, to truly see the complex human beings grappling with their own silent battles just beneath the surface. Elena's choice, made in a split second of crisis, rippled far beyond that single nursery. It ignited a spark of hope in a man consumed by grief, and offered a baby the comfort it desperately needed. It proved that compassion is a universal language, capable of bridging divides of class, circumstance, and initial misunderstanding, transforming strangers into pillars of support. Her story encourages us to embrace our shared humanity, to be unafraid to offer a hand, a listening ear, or even just a moment of gentle presence when someone is clearly struggling. We often underestimate the profound impact of these small gestures, how they can shift the trajectory of a life, offering a lifeline when all seems lost and hope feels like a distant memory. This viral video story reminds us that life is full of such compelling historia emotionantes, con riveraltas inesperadas, that teach us about resilience and the power of connection. We invite you to share your own experiences of unexpected kindness in the comments below, fostering a community built on empathy and genuine human understanding. If this story resonated with you, if it touched your heart and made you reflect on the quiet power of empathy, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to our channel for more truly profound and uplifting human experiences. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful tales of transformation and the unwavering spirit of humanity. Thank you for watching.